Welcome back to another episode of the We Get to Do This podcast. In this episode, we got to sit down live and in person with Dr. Spencer Lindholm, who is the owner and founder of Great North Athletics. He's a sports chiropractor who specializes in rehab and performance and actually grew up in Minnesota and has over 10 years of experience with helping with sports injuries. It's always fun for us to be able to sit down with another practitioner and actually be able to talk in person with them. And we got to see his awesome gym space down in Eden Prairie.
Yeah, super pumped about that and him letting us come and record in his space. That was really awesome. What he's building is super cool, super unique, y'all. I would highly recommend checking him out. The episode went deep on the holistic side of training and being healthy. We did go further into strength training than past episodes, as well as super deep into the gait analysis side of things as well for runners, and what both Spencer and myself see a lot of when it comes to gait analysis and issues with endurance athletes on that topic. As always, if you like the podcast, please consider sharing it with a friend, leaving a review. 5 stars would be awesome. Much appreciated. Thanks for listening to the episode, y'all.
Thanks for being here. Enjoy. Welcome back to another episode of the We Get to Do This podcast. Today's super exciting because we have another live in-person recording with Spencer Lindholm of Great North Athletics. So thanks for being here, Spencer.
Yeah, excited to be here. Well, thanks for being here. You guys came to my place today, so
Yeah, I made the big trek down to Eden Prairie, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Just kidding, it's like 10, 15 minutes away.
I was
for
busy.
us.
Yeah, super
Very close. But no, this is like a full circle moment because Spencer and I met, were you in the class 2 or 3 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, we met at Northwestern. You were taking the acupuncture certification for chiropractors. And I was one of like the TAs helping out there. And now here we are. I think a couple then months ago, so my friend Shelby, who works with your wife, was like, hey, there's this guy that you, I can't remember if she said pod or just like connect with, but who's like big in like running and sports and athletics. And she was like, you guys need to meet. And here we are.
Turns out we had already met.
Turns out we'd already met. I'm like, oh yeah, I know Spencer. And now we have Jacob along for the ride.
I get to hang out. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Now you're leading the show.
But yeah, thanks for letting us come here and being on the podcast.
Yeah, I wish we could like pick up the camera and just like tour.
Yeah, maybe the end we'll take everyone along if you're on video and you can come see, because this is a sick gym space. You have like all the equipment, you have tables, you have an ice bath, you have strength equipment, there's chiropractic stuff like tables and chiropractic adjustment tables. What do you call them?
Yeah.
Basically. So yeah. So thanks for letting us be here.
Yeah.
But just so the audience knows a little bit more about who you are, Spencer, who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
Ooh, good questions. Well, as you already said, so I'm Spencer Lindholm, sports chiropractor, or at least that's how we like to brand ourselves. I'm the owner of Great North Athletics, so here in Eden Prairie. Who are you? What do you do? Yeah, so we focus a lot here on working with active individuals. I mean, that's our main focus, and that's kind of the naming of sports chiropractic is, people that are active and wanting to stay active is primarily who we're seeing, although I'd say we see a lot of stuff. I don't know if you're similar with your practice, but it's kind of our main focus. Then we get some things off the beaten path. And yeah, we really focus on movement being a healthy part of people's lifestyle and keeping them moving, it's like keeping a body in motion. And I think, I don't know if you guys have experienced injuries and keeping you out of, running or other activities you love to do, but, physically that's really challenging, but mentally that's really challenging. And so we focus on doing longer visits with people and providing really personalized care, because that's a big thing that we see as an issue within the medical field. And that personalized care is really figuring out what are your goals, running you through a assessment and figuring out, what does your body do well, what does it not do well, and trying to get it better at those things that doesn't do so well. And that kind of ties into like why we do it. I think it's the keeping people doing the activities they love, the stuff that fills their cup and is really, really valuable, not only for that activity and, their goals with it, but how that serves other areas of their life too.
Mhm.
Did you know that you wanted to be a chiro from a young age? When did that first pop in your head?
Oh, probably right when I came out of the womb. No, no.
I knew
In
it
the womb,
sounded
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, good question. Probably in high school. Like that's, I grew up in Minnesota here. I grew up in Shakopee and grew up playing hockey, running cross country, track, and not so much with cross country and track, but with hockey. Like I had back pain, which, not super common for a 15, 16, 17-year-old, but I had a chiro and a PT that I would see for some different issues, and I found both of them really helpful. And so I knew going into school that I was like, all right, I really think I want to go somewhere in this, healthcare field. So those were on my list, and yeah, I gravitated more and more toward chiropractic. Mainly because the freedom you have to open your own business and shape it the way you want. PT is growing that way a little bit more, but traditionally it's very, within the healthcare systems. And obviously before they fought for their doctorate too, is you had to have a referral to go see them, which was, had just changed at the time that I went to undergrad. So yeah, I was between those and then, to throw another curveball in there, I almost went, to school to become an occupational therapist because the PT that was treating me in high school, I said, "Hey, do you have a job for me in the summer? Like, I'd love to get some experience in the clinic here." And he has the adult sports clinic, but he also has a pediatric therapy clinic. And he showed up for the first day of work, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to have you down in Capable Kids, the Pete's clinic here, helping out with OT and PT and speech." And I fell in love with it. I spent like 5 summers doing that, and I almost went that route, but uh, yeah, I think true passion and thinking like a long career, right? Like 30 plus years of doing something. Like, yeah, I really, really just like being in the, athlete movement, sports based world. And so, yeah,
Right, right, right. And you also got your personal training background at some point too, right?
yeah,
Or because you train some clients as well.
yeah,
I mix that in.
yep, yeah. Less so, like we focus mostly on the clinical care.
Yeah,
It's on our list to bring a trainer in here
yeah.
and, yeah, have take over some of those services. But yeah, I'd say mostly out of demand, right? You just get people that are like looking for a trainer. We're already doing rehab with them and, which rehab is just a lower form of, what you'd consider training, I think. And so just bridging that gap from rehab to performance is we're usually looking at people that are like, "Hey, can you write me a program, so I can work on, strength or whatever their goal is for activities they're engaging in." And some people are like, "Well, can you train me?" And yeah, so a couple of years ago was when I started being like, "All right, I'll selectively work with some people one on one." So yeah, we do some training right now, but I'd love to grow this space even more and have more of that because I think the original thought for this was to build this into a nice clinic gym hybrid where, we got half of the space here is focused on clinical care and the other half is focused on performance goals or physical fitness and things like that.
But I feel like even if it's not like a dedicated 60-minute personal training session, just having that background and knowing the
Mm.
proper way to lift, the progression for people that are coming in with an injury, who then want to get back into their normal lifting activities, to know how to help them with that trajectory, I feel like is so beneficial.
Yeah, yeah. I've met so many personal trainers that I would say are more knowledgeable than some clinicians I know. And I think a lot of that is because if you nerd out on this stuff, like I'm sure all three of us do, like you're just constantly wanting to know more and you're digging deeper. And I think, yeah, having a background in that is huge because the same progression you bring somebody through for rehab is really similar to what you're going to do for training. I mean, it's just progressive overload. It's the same thing you do with a running program is like, you got to be able to periodize things and apply those same principles. And so, yeah, with rehab, we don't use the same template for everybody, but we kind of look at it as like phase one, phase two, phase three. We might start you in phase two, you in phase one, but it's like we gotta progress you and switch out exercises and, obviously change the total volume and load that you're doing with that type of stuff. But yeah, I think that was super helpful. And especially too, at times it's like you start thinking about, okay, we've got whatever lateral hip instability, and you're like, holy cow, my brain races with like 200 exercises you could use. And it's nice the more that you've tried that with people, you kind of have like your favorites you pick from. But I think that's between like somebody that's new with working with training, um, yeah, you see them struggle with like knowing how to tweak something, and somebody, that exercise isn't working well for them. And they're like, shoot, where do I go from here? But knowing like how to cue it, going, oh, I can, just like I can progress this, I can regress it too and find an easier position or different exercise to do it. But yeah, I think that helped a lot just with, chiropractic school doesn't cover a lot of rehab. And so I think a lot of that you have to like be passionate about and want to dive deeper on your own.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I once I think I heard on a podcast way back when about how like the body should be looked at like learning like a language. And I like at the moment I heard that, my whole like grasp of like learning the body completely changed. Once it was like, okay, I'm gonna look at this as like if I was gonna go learn Spanish, right?
Yeah.
And kind of going back to your example of, you can work your quad in a bazillion ways, right?
Yeah.
But understanding that if you're working with someone that has a specific like knee thing going on at that moment in time, and you try a specific exercise and it doesn't work, and then being like, okay, I got 10 other things I can try right now in my tool belt, that takes
Yeah.
time. But I think that like for myself has been a huge unlock for
Yeah.
me. And then, kind of taking it a step further too, I have been for the past 5 years just recording like every single exercise, literally every single exercise that even if there's YouTube videos out there for it, right? That I have like ever done or given anyone. And I was just telling Kaylee this morning that my YouTube exercise video library has like 450 videos. And it's like, thank previous Jacob so much for doing that, because I'll even then go back and look through like my own stuff from like 3 years ago of like, oh, I forgot about that exercise.
Yeah.
And I'll insert it right here. Let's give that a try. Boom, works.
Yeah.
So I think that's
I do that all the time. And that's like, I find prepping for patient visits and really thinking and like making a list here, I kind of call like a pool of exercise we're going to pull from. And as I talk with them and see things happening, I kind of am like, all right, yeah, that's probably not for today. That's for the future.
right.
But yeah, we use a programming software. We use Prehab Guys, if you're familiar. So they have a clinical version of that. And so we use that for all of our rehab and runner programming and stuff. And their database has, I think like 4,500 exercises in it. So even at times, like you just get ideas in there where you're like, all right, I have thoughts here, but you can go comb for some other stuff and go, oh my gosh, I forgot about that exercise. Like that's such a great variation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4,400.
Yeah.
We've got a ways to go. 4,000 more videos.
There's another database I used to use in my other practice before, and it was like that one had like 12,000 exercises in it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they're not all exercise. Some like there's just a bunch that are like foam rolling different areas of the body.
Right.
Some of them are. That one was more maybe hospital based PT, so it's like sit to stand transfers with patients and whatnot. So Prehab Guys is a little narrowed down, but still, 4,500 is a lot of exercises.
No wonder people get intimidated at the gym.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's like there's so many different ways you can go. And that's why, obviously, I'm biased about having a coach, but like having somebody like guide you through this of what is the best movement for me today.
Yeah, I can't understate the value of like a coach and whatnot. That's when people talk about the cost of like a gym membership versus personal training versus like small group fitness or large group fitness. And it's like, I did CrossFit for like 7 years, and people would always be like, oh my gosh, it's, 150 to 200 a month. And they're like, yeah, but do you know what personal training costs per session? And like, you're comparing this to Anytime Fitness or something like that. You're like, the value you're getting and somebody telling you exactly what you're going to do, they got eyes on everybody in the class. They're going to coach the people that aren't, doing it well. And it's like, that's just huge. I think even as somebody who programs for other people, I'm like, I walk into the gym some days, I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a plan. What am I going to do today? You almost feel lost because there's like so many options. And on the other end is like, if you don't know much about exercise, you're probably really lost because you're like, I don't even know what that equipment over there does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I get asked a lot if I if I write my own program and my own training and I have a run coach.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm a run coach and a personal trainer, but I have my own run coach.
Yeah.
So I never write my own runs. Very, very rarely. Every once in a while I'll be like, hey, Matt, can I try this workout? This looks fun. Or, and then I have a personal trainer I see every Monday. And then there's one day a week that I get to write my own strength plan. And every week I either roll up and I'm like, man, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And it like actually causes some anxiety for a
Yeah.
little bit, or I write it ahead of time, and like go look on the internet and like think about different
Yeah.
things. But it is funny. And like, at the same time, I can be training someone and now be able to have them come in. Not everyone's like this, but some people will have them come in that I see weekly and on the spot, like just design an hour in my head in
Yeah.
like 10 seconds and be like, I know exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But for myself, it's
No, I
crazy.
can't. And if I do, that's my other big thing of like why I like having somebody else tell me what to do. Because as much as I like doing hard things in life, I'm like, if I don't like burpees, I'm probably not going to put them in a workout for myself,
Max.
But then I show up to a workout and I'm like, oh, we got burpees and I'm just going to do them,
Yeah.
And that's like, it just takes away that mental capacity of like, what am I going to do? And then, somebody else is going to make you do stuff you don't want to do, which is probably good for you. You probably don't want to do it because you're not great at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's like crawling. I have clients crawl all the time.
Yeah.
You have us do that all the time.
I'm like, it's so good
Oh,
for
right.
runners. There's even a crawl variation.
Yeah.
Man, there's probably 50 that you could find on YouTube right now if you typed in crawling exercise.
And they're all on Jacob's YouTube.
And they're all,
Yeah.
I have so many that I've got from other people though.
Yeah.
And I never will go into the gym and make myself crawl personally. But then on Mondays, I'll roll up with Zach, my trainer, and every once in a while he'll make me crawl. I'll be like, for real. And then I think, well, I make people do this every single day pretty much. So
yeah, I bet you're one of those trainers that gets a slight amount of pleasure out of making people do those movements that you're like, they're probably eating those right now.
For sure.
I think every trainer does to a certain degree.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, this is going to suck. And I know it's going to suck, but you're going to thank me for it later.
But also I was thinking from like a cost effectiveness standpoint, we're talking about the expense of like memberships and stuff.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, obviously this is very good for our businesses when people come in and get injured, but it's like if you're spending a certain amount on a personal trainer, somebody to help you guide, like yes, that cost can add up, but I feel like those people typically need way less like rehab and injury help in the long run. So it's like looking at the bigger picture of, okay, if I'm spending, $200 a month on a run coach, that could help me from one, needing to be out of running for a couple months because of an injury, because I was over using high body. And with lifting too, it's like if you're lifting poorly or incorrectly, again, you could have that could even lead to needing new joints, bigger things at some point. It's like the bigger picture that we have to think about.
Yeah, like medical costs can add up for sure. And then, that's where a lot of people aren't as proactive, which I'll say I'm that way too, and a lot of people like the quicker fixes. And so I think trying to get that with physical adaptations is really hard. Like, trying to DIY things if you're not comfortable and, skipping the cost of like a coach or a trainer is, you might see that on the back end. And the majority of training related injuries are because of training errors related to load management and volume and knowing when to put a rest day in. And those are all things like, even if a coach is programming for you, you can still run into those. But you have a coach to bounce that off of, or with run coaching is like, usually you can see somebody's metrics on, their stress scores and things and where they're at. And they can give you, a rating of perceived exertion, like RPE scores. And you can see like when they're ready for that, and hopefully avoid an injury or overtraining errors. And I think if you're just, assessing your own body, like, I don't know, subjectively, I'm not great at reading my own body. as much as, you try and be in tune with that. And I think a lot of people really, really struggle with that. I mean, you see it with different people with movement training where you tell them how to do something and you're like, that's not at all what I was looking for. Just like that awareness of your own body is it's not just proprioception, but it's like that body mapping. And you see it with people with asking pain scale ratings and things like that. And some people are like, I can't, like that idea of being able to understand how bad that hurts or, describe you where it is and what it feels like is not great. So yeah, trying to look into your own training insights is really hard, I think. Yeah, obviously we're all huge advocates of like getting help in those areas, but I think there's a lot of reasons why, but that's a, really, really good one that I look at a lot.
Yeah, it's the preventative side. Like, how can we prevent getting
Yeah.
these overuse injuries or just injuries in general?
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause
Well, consistency, that's like where most people struggle. And I'm like, if you don't have for one, you get the accountability with a coach or a class or things like that. And then obviously the more you pay for anything, the more you're bought into doing it. And for a lot of people, I think if it's just, oh, I'm just going to get a gym membership and go to the gym, it's like, sure, there's a lot of room for error, but also you're probably not going to go nearly as often as you would or should. And you go through these boom or bust cycles like a lot of people do, where it's like, yeah, I'm going all in, it's New Year's and go 2 weeks hard and then you take a month off and you try and get back in. And it's like, that's a lot of the training related errors I think people go through. And, you know, those little aches and pains all of a sudden turn into something that's a little more nagging.
Mhm.
Yeah. A lot of times too, people I find with the consistency factor that we think we are more consistent in doing more than we actually are.
Yeah.
Like especially with strength training for runners is where my mind goes with that, or mobility or speed work or like kind of the more technical aspects of it where I'll have conversations with athletes and I'm like this too, right? But where we think we're strength training twice a week. And then you go back and look at like
Yeah.
the frequency of how often they've actually been in the gym with you or like how many strength workouts they've recorded. And it's like, oh, actually it's one every other week.
Yeah.
Like for real, the disconnect can be that
Yeah.
that large. It's pretty wild.
You make that comparison to other things and you're like, if you studied Spanish once every other week,
Right.
how good are you going to get at Spanish?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, where most people I feel like really struggle with like consistency, or even if you have a program, like adherence to that program.
Right.
Um, yeah. And then, you don't do something right. You do it, you lose it. And so you
Right.
become deconditioned and just less prepared. And all of a sudden you go hop in and think you can do what you were doing months ago, or, for some people years ago. Oh, I grew up a runner and then they didn't run for a decade. And it's like, yeah, it's been a decade. Like your body's not adapted for that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you take, I also like with my runners, a lot of times I'll take running out of the equation. Like I'll say, if we took running out of your exercise routine, how often are you moving? And it is crazy the answers you'll get to that too. I don't know if you've noticed that because again, like I understand like running can obviously be a form of staying healthy, right?
Yeah.
For sure. However, the other things are also still very important. And if we take running out of the equation, like how often are you strength training? How often are you
Yeah.
getting 8 hours of sleep? How often are you eating and we're able to kind of cover that up a lot as runners, I feel like too. And I think that's another interesting point that everyone listening right now should
Yeah.
should like ask themselves and look at that for themselves too.
Honestly, that's like one of the biggest reasons why. So, like, we don't take insurance here, and
Yeah.
partially because it makes it really hard to spend more time with patients and go beyond just like symptom relief care. And when we have more time with people, I mean, for one, I think you can provide more like person centered care where it's like you're not just, hey, knee pain is in my office, like Jacob is in with knee pain who has goals, that he wants to get toward and things that this is keeping him from doing. And the old like biomedical approach of just there's a tissue that's injured and it needs to be fixed, we know is not correct, or it can be partially correct, obviously, but the biopsychosocial approach of like looking at, how does that all intertwine into like your knee pain could be keeping you from going to your job and making money, and you're concerned about being able to pay your mortgage or being able to pick your kids up and play with them, or that marathon you signed up for. And like when we have more time with people, that's the stuff we try and dive deeper into. And to your point, like the lifestyle factors, I think that's like a big thing that gets overlooked is like, well, you want me to fix your knee pain, but you're sleeping 5 hours a night. You drink like 12 ounces of water a day. You got really poor stress management. You sedentary lifestyle. You're at a desk 8 hours sitting. And it's like, we're only gonna be able to make so much progress here. And so we find it really valuable to like, hey, let's figure out these things. They're on our intake forms, but they're conversations we have to go, look, I'm not going to tell you, what you need to do for your sleep routine, but we're going to identify like these are problems and let you know why they're contributing at least. Yeah.
How do you communicate to individuals when like an issue like that? So like if they're seeing maybe you and even multiple other practitioners, it's just not all the hands-on stuff, the strength training, things like that isn't getting the problem fixed, and you have a suspicion that it's like either sleep or something else in life. How do you go about talking to people?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I talked to him about look, these are like the overarching themes here. These, even from the opposite end, like this is your foundation, like you have to get these things right before you can get really concerned with, how much tibial rotation you have or your foot over pronating or weakness here. Like we're going to address those either way, because that's probably the main reason you're here. But, I think if somebody understands it right away, like you can tell when somebody's like, I know, and, um, helping them make some goals toward that and like, hey, here's probably what we should be working toward and why that can help you. Like, I just think if you understand the problem and why it's a problem, you're probably going to be much more likely. But the amount of people that don't understand how vital sleep is, for instance, and it's like, as somebody who sleeps like 6.5 hours a night, I'm like, I get it. That's just
Do
life.
as we say.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know. That's like everybody expects the auto mechanic to have like the nicest car out there. And they're like, no, I'm driving this old junk. I'm working on other people's
Yeah, dude,
cars.
my sleep is not where it is to be ever. I try so hard. I can't. I don't even know why I wear an aura.
Wait till you have kids someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my main gripe. I'll say is yeah.
He
It's
already
really hard
gets
with
up really
kids.
early though, so he could take the early
Yeah, but how am I
shift.
going to do with the late nights
You're
portion of
not.
it and waking up in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the late night person.
All right, cool. Yeah. Get that on camera.
Yeah.
It's
Get
recorded
playback on that.
history.
Uh, yeah, I think just having those conversations is huge and like helping people understand though. I think a lot of people don't realize that or they just don't think about it. Like we overlook obvious things all the time. And yeah, sometimes that person that you're in, you're in because you're asking for my opinion. I look at it as like, hey, why is my knee hurt? What can I do about it? And I think it's like not great of us to just overlook those things and be like, well, those are just things that you do in your life. It's like, again, person-centered care is like all those things matter and those things are part of your lifestyle and things that you have control to change. I can't change. So the best I can do is give you some awareness on it and tell you why that's not helpful. But people that want to, it's like we'll dive deeper into strategies for things like that. And same thing, like, you can write somebody the best program in the world for mobility or strength or whatever, but if they're not doing it, it's not doing anything. It's just collecting dust. So, we try to go through with people and ask them kind of like motivational interviewing, but like figuring out like what are barriers here for you to being able to do this more and then seeing if we can help problem solve that. And I'll give people suggestions like, hey, trying to do your mobility during your gym session when you're telling me you only have an hour in the gym, um, and you already have more than an hour of work you can't get to in the gym is like probably trying to fit that in there is just not the best time. Even if you're asking me, hey, when should I do my mobility? Is it better before or after my workout? I'm going to tell you like whenever you can get it done is best. And I think for sleep and stuff like that, hydration, nutrition, all those things. It's like, it's so personalized to what your problem is that we have to identify it and chat about it and think of ideas.
I feel like we love super complicated and like complex. We want the complex answer and the
Yeah.
complex diagnosis to be able to explain, going back to like knee pain. And for some, this is not a quote from my mom, but I'm thinking of my mom, but I feel like she'd always say, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And it's like, we know that we need 8 hours. Like we've been told these things so much. We've been told that we need to drink. We've been told that we need to eat certain foods and eat enough. But we like to just make it we like to dive into how many macros do I need? How much exactly sleep do I need? And like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's just sleep, eat. Again, I know there's like nuances with all of these things, but, and even back to the consistency too. Yes, throwing in speed and hills into our running and stuff is important and can help get you to the next level. But at the end of the day, it's just getting out every day and running miles.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be this huge, like, complex thing.
Yeah. And I think for most people, they tend to have general goals, you know? Oh, I want to get more toned. I want to run my first half marathon, something like that. And it's like, yeah, getting in the weeds of like, really specific programming like that is probably not necessary. Like the more people feel overloaded mentally with what they have to do physically, it just detracts from that ability to get out and do it versus like, yeah, just like get out and run every day or most days, and the mileage is going to accumulate either way. Yeah, because I think it's the same thing with getting in the gym and doing strength training and stuff is like people build it up into this mental fatigue of like what they need to be able to do. And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you just got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying, like, in our wellness world right now, you have the red light therapy, you have the ice bath, you have the sauna, and all these things just start adding up until you're not doing anything, or you're doing a billion things. And like you said, the fatigue of just that alone,
Yeah.
it's like you don't, it's like bring it back to the basics
Do you find you get questions on that stuff a lot clinically? Like, hey, do you think I should use this massage gun in this area or
all the time.
foam rolling, cold
How do
plunge,
you feel about cold
infrared?
plunging? How do you
Yeah.
feel about this? And yeah, all the time.
Yeah. I commonly will have patients pull up, supplements on their phone. They'll ask me about things they might already have at home or other services they can go do elsewhere in that recovery realm. And I'm like, you know, it's not that those things aren't helpful. They're just not going to be the biggest piece of the pie. And that's like the conversation I'll have. I'm like, look, if we're on a percentage scale here, like 90% of your work is going to be in the physical adaptation of like we got to drive things with rehab and movement and things like that and clinically stuff we can do on the table, but the things you're asking about are like the 2%. These are, and even that's where sleep comes in and things like that. I'm like, why are we talking about cold plunges when you sleep 5 hours a night? Like
Right.
if we talk about what value those each have for recovery, it's like,
Or supplements, but you're not eating breakfast every day.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's only so much that we
yeah,
can do. Do you think, talking about, because I feel like all of our practices are focused around whole person care. We're very much not in the grinder business of seeing people on
yeah,
the 10-minute. Do you think this is like where the industry is going as a whole? Because, I mean, one of the big reasons why I switched from Western medicine, being a nurse inpatient, to what I do now is because I wanted to be able to talk about all of the lifestyle things with people.
yeah,
And I didn't want to just focus on, okay, you have this knee surgery. I'll see you in a couple years for your other knee because we're not going to change anything.
yeah.
Everything's just been so siloed. Do you think we're going to a more holistic approach? What do you think?
I do. I think there's more demand for it.
Yeah.
Um, do I see like 100 years from now, everything's completely shifted that way? Probably not. I think even with technology now, it is very evident that there's always going to be this like quick fix mentality and so many people are conditioned to believe things about their body. And that's, again, things that we try and educate on, but it's like, yeah, the doc told me I got, arthritis, therefore I'm going to need a replacement or, things that I can't do anything about this, and we try not to be research nerds and just spout out stats at people, but it's like, it's amazing when you start looking at the research and most surgeons are starting to like, it takes a decade or two, but they start to listen to these research studies that come out that it's like, hey, look, the results of repairing or replacing your ACL after a tear versus not doing it and just doing rehab is turns out you can have a really functional knee without ever doing that. So I think Western medicine starts to listen to some of these things that they go, oh, it doesn't work, but compared to more holistic care, it's like there has to be good evidence to support that. And so I think as that comes along and there's more research there, like we'll see it, but like most things, and consumer demand drives it. And I think the amount of people that come in are like, I've been looking for this type of care. I think is evident of that, where a lot of people come in and voice their frustrations with experiences they've had. And I mean, my own experiences that I've had within the medical field have shaped how I treat patients and why we operate the way we do. Cause I've had experiences where I'm just like, you leave somewhere really frustrated. And it's like, man, like, why was I frustrated with that? It's like, well, I didn't feel like they answered my questions or gave me enough time even to ask them. They just snapped a picture and said, everything looks good, therefore I must be good, and you're like, either way, I'm walking with a limp here. This hurts. Like, I need more here. But yeah, you know, short answer, yeah, I think it will, but I think there's a limitation on probably how far that will go. And yeah, that takes a deeper change within the insurance field and coverage and things because so many people still want to use that. And if the insurance companies aren't going to cover that type of care, then like we probably won't see that change. So yeah,
Yeah.
policies driving some of that.
Yeah. Always.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I would love to take insurance and be able to treat people through insurance. Like, it's not like we don't take insurance because we hate, the idea of using your insurance. I have insurance. I go use it,
Right.
but it's like, I just can't do the type or level of care that we want to do with you, based on that. And so, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, but I would love to see that shift for like several reasons.
Yeah.
We should talk about, I'm curious about runners specifically.
As a runner,
Yeah, as a runner, asking for a friend. Do you feel like there's, if you could pick like one thing that all runners should be working on to stay healthy, do you feel like that you see is it like a pattern with that?
this feels like a trap.
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
We want the
one
one
thing.
golden answer.
I know in my mind that there's a lot, but I want you to pick
Yeah,
one
what
that,
do you can say a few things though too if you got any ideas.
that I think they should be focusing on.
Yeah, either like whether yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the lack of strength training is probably the biggest one. And I think so many runners are aware of that now, like the awareness of people that come in and say, "Hey, I know I need to work on strength," or, they're aware that that's a problem and or they're actively asking like, "Hey, I would like you to write me a runner strength program." I think that's probably the biggest one, because that's just been lacking for so long.
I paid him to say that.
So I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, yeah, and then I think for a lot of runners is they don't know enough to properly manage their training load. Like you know, like my first half marathon I did, I grabbed a Hal Higdon program for free off the internet and did it. I didn't get injured. It went fine. Like that's great. But the majority of people I see that come in with injuries, it's usually related to something that, will review their training history and be like, yeah, like why'd you progress that way? That's just a lot of jump there on the body. I think that's where, it's not that you have a bad knee just because your knee hurts. It's like your knee got overloaded. And there's probably reasons why the left one hurts, and the right one doesn't. And we can dive into that. That's the stuff we like to nerd out on. But, when you start looking at that stuff, I think training error.
Yeah.
But and then I'm gonna spin off that and say, I think running form is so misunderstood.
Yeah.
Like we like to consider ourselves movement specialists and like looking at gait and doing a lot of gait analysis. We do a lot of gait retraining. And it's amazing when you start looking at, the common themes. Like, do you guys do gait assessments?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
What's the like number one or one and two, most common like running form issues that you see?
The first one that comes to mind is people not using their posterior chain at all.
Okay. I like it.
A ton of people.
It's probably the same thing you see in the gym though.
Yeah.
People that can't hinge and, there's not
That's
a lot
good.
of.
Yeah. I mean, even like when I was doing getting gear half marathon this weekend, the amount of people that I would see running by and I just look at them and go, how are you running like the speed you are running right now without even like using your glutes at all or hamstrings? I think a lot of people are really, really, you can like kind of rope them into, I guess, like an overstrider, but not like you can get away with a lot.
Yeah.
Not just by like you don't have to be an overstrider to be not using your glutes and hamstrings at all. I feel like a lot of people are just so upright. And I think I even have that issue sometimes too, where I look at my own gait and I am like consciously working on that a lot. That's number one. that I would say. And then like number 2, I kind of go to the arms, I would say. I don't
Interesting.
know why, but that's where my mind's going right now.
Tell
And I
me
feel like a
more.
lot of people, well, you can tell a lot from like people's gait from their arm carriage,
Yeah.
right? And specifically like their thoracic spine.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are either not using like specifically their lat muscle correctly.
Yeah.
And I have this conversation with clients a lot about how the lat, I describe it, it's the, kind of back to the posterior chain, but like it's the butt of your upper body and it's connected to your butt. Like we sometimes, ironically, focus too much on our butt with running. And I think utilizing the lat as a powerful mechanism for pulling the arms back, but also for, so you see runners all the time that have their arms flared out, for having them pull them in too. And the relationship that has with like hip stability even. And I think, and then I would go to like collapsing type of mechanics, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think those two things are, if you have strong glutes and a strong lat, I think we can go a lot further than we probably realize.
Yeah.
That's where my mind goes.
I think the glutes and posterior chain, it's just a common theme. Like, and I see, I think that's why also so many people that are just like very upright posture, that when we try and cue to get that forward lean at all, I think because you have to use your glutes and posterior chain more, is you see that there's just this tendency to want to come out of it, or this like, this feels awkward for me,
Right.
Yeah, and then the lats. I like that though, the bringing the arms in, because we always talk like even outside of runner specific stuff, but like, we call it the Sunday paper cue of like, people used to go out, grab the coffee and, they stick the Sunday paper there. It's like, the lat helps a lot with that. But 2 is like, it does shoulder extension, and it should naturally come with like a little bit of that thoracic rotation that people just feel so rigid in their torso. Yeah. It's funny, when I used to teach gait analysis, I'd always tell students, mainly because there's so much to focus on that you could be looking at, where it's like, I'm like, don't worry so much about arm swing, or what's happening from here up. Like, and I still partially believe this, but most of that is like just your body dissipating or absorbing the forces from the lower body. You're just creating counter rotation and stuff. But we've all felt where if you start changing your arm swing, how your legs will follow too. So I think, you can have that go both ways, but I find it's more rare though for me, which, I'm not saying right or wrong. It's just like, that's why I was asking like patterns of what you see. Cause we don't like work on probably arm swing a whole lot with people. Cause I feel like we see so many overstriders. And to that point, it's not that, I'd say almost everybody that is an overstrider, it's not that we're getting them down to, hey, 0 degrees, but it's like, all right, you're at 25 degrees of overstride. Like, that's huge. Like, let's even cut it down to 15, or something reasonable here. But that and low cadence. And I think those two go hand in hand, because if you're overstriding, you're now going to be on the ground longer and you're not going to cycle your feet as much. But those two, I think from like a running efficiency standpoint, like not getting those braking forces with that overstride. But there's also nuance to that. And that's where I think if you, we'll say like, don't know enough, you could just look and be like, their foot's landing in front of them. It's automatically bad. And it's like, there's such a difference when we look at it slow motion of like somebody whose foot is still moving forward, and they're getting opposing forces there, versus like somebody who's, they're overstriding, but they're in the middle of cycling that back and pulling themselves through and like using that posterior chain. I think that's huge. Like, the nuance of not just you're 20 degrees overstriding, therefore we have to do this or that. But yeah, those are probably the 2 most common. I think they go hand in hand, but
I'm curious what your opinion is on this. I feel like I'm correcting more in the sagittal plane on runners than I am in the like frontal plane. And so typically, and like I use the frontal plane, and what I mean by that is sagittal being like overstriding or something with the arms,
flexion extension movement. What most people think of as running, like very robotic,
the forward backward. Like that's where I'll be like, I'm going to change something here. We're going to do drills on the wall for that, getting the feet down quicker, the cadence, things like that. It's rare that I actually will change something in someone's frontal plane. So like a good example is like Weaver mechanics. So like if I point this out on people a lot, but I'll be like, if you would draw a line straight down that treadmill right now and you're watching yourself run on it, your feet are running on a tightrope. And that could be why your hips are, something's going on there, maybe or maybe not. But this is where I'm kind of curious your opinion. And also the stage in which I see people is typically they aren't. It's very rare that they're like they're injured, right? They would go to someone else for that. I might have someone that comes in that's like, I have a chronic thing going on that,
Yeah.
like, you know, but a lot of times people are healthy when they see me. And with like anything in that like frontal plane collapsing weaver, things like that, if someone's been, or like an internal or external rotation of like the ankle or tibia, if someone has been running like that for 30 years, I honestly just, I hesitate to mess with that as much.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well,
I go back and forth too,
I
so.
I agree. Like I work so much more on sagittal plane issues and like overstride, forward lean, low heel kick, like how high they're bringing the knees up,
Hip
things like that.
extension.
Yeah, hip extension, toe off. So like all those would fit in that bucket. Um, I think really like our posterior view of gait analysis is where we get a lot of that frontal plane. And I'm like, I think it's if we have a big disparity on right versus left, like we're isolating, like your right foot is over pronating. And it's not that all over pronating is bad. Maybe your left one's doing a little, but it's like we have an asymmetry here. We probably want to, we're never going to get the body perfectly symmetrical, but it's like, yeah, that's happening a lot more there. We want to, take control of that. Same thing if somebody's getting a big, pelvic drop from side to side. If it's happening on both sides, sure, like we'll program some exercises around it. We're probably not doing any like gait specific changes there.
Mhm.
I think we look a lot at like the, body into running connection of like, what do you have to work with, and that's where we go after a gait assessment and go into like functional movement assessment and try and isolate like any major mobility or strength and stability problems. And usually with the gait retraining, I'd say it's mostly that sagittal plane type stuff.
Yeah.
And then with the, you know, other things that we want to work on, that's where we'll program like rehab exercises or strong training around it.
Kind of corrective exercise kind of thing.
Yeah. But like anything we're trying to change that is related to running gait, because it's such a highly repetitive movement. And if somebody's not going to shift their training load, which we usually don't want them to, but like if you're going to continue on with your training plan, but we're also trying to change your gait during that, like we're really cautious to just like, hey, here's a cue, here's what you should be doing, and just go do that now for 40 miles this week, because you're gonna shift loads somewhere in the body. Like it might be more efficient where like, you're using less miles per gallon and you're having less load on, maybe that painful knee of yours, but now all of a sudden you run into Achilles issues and calf and hamstring and your hips hurt or something like that because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like you're gonna go run either way. Like you gotta have that load go somewhere in your body. I think that's where a lot of people run into issues too, is like, oh, hey, I'm just going to go do this new thing all of a sudden. It's like, I don't know if your body's prepared for that. It hasn't done any miles at that. Now to go throw whatever your training this week is and just go 100% into it. So it's like usually gait changes will go 6 to 10 weeks of like a progressive, percentage increase. And yeah, but I think we're on the same page with like, frontal plane versus sagittal. Like I'm just not usually doing much with gait, at least with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious because that's kind of how I roll with it too. It's like what you just said. I also find that similar to lifting, heavy lifting, you can usually tell pretty quickly where compensations are happening. Similar with like fast running.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, if you're never running fast, and fast is very dependent on the person, right? That could be a 10-minute fast. That could be a 5-minute.
Yeah.
It could be a sprint, depending on who you are. If you're never doing that, be careful. But for the most part, like if someone's able, having them run fast, it's crazy how blaring a lot of the compensations and different issues will pop up too, that you can, like I said, I can kind of see and what I find as well with people. And then we work on that a lot too.
Yeah.
And then go from there, so.
No, and that makes sense. I mean, like, for people that are injured, like, I think the biggest thing, I don't know if you guys see this a lot, but it's like taking somebody that's active, and this probably relates more to like our practice philosophy, but like, and saying, hey, don't go do that activity, which is what most doctors do. They say, hey, if it hurts, don't do it. Like we try and give them some pain guidelines of like, green light, yellow light, red light. Like if you're 0 to 3, like you're good, keep going. 4 to 6, like yellow light, like keep an eye on it. The check engine light's coming on, and if you're 7 out of 10, shut it down. But we also try and like keep people running, and that might not be what you want it to look like, but just because you can't do 40 miles this week doesn't mean that we can't have you do 15 to 20 miles and have it be like a run walk strategy, things like that. But usually the higher intensity workouts, like, yeah, probably not the time when something's hurting to be doing hills and sprint intervals and things like that. It's that and giving the body recovery in between like those back-to-back days and things like that. So usually with like return to running, I think that's huge.
But
Yeah.
get like the difference. I'm typically not doing the return to run as much.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Yeah. But I mean, it's all in that load management bucket,
Right.
how much stress is your body taking on? And there's ways you can help it recover from that. And there's ways you can help prepare it for it. And I think those are all things you guys probably focus on too, is like, the recovery side and giving advice and things on how they can prep for it. But yeah, a lot of people, that's, I think, just that big struggle of like load management.
Yeah. So if we put that all into one like quick sentence and someone was tuning into what we just talked about, the analysis, what would you
TLDR.
say? So look at overstriding and probably cadence work. If someone was listening to this right now.
And the thing is, honestly, those two don't go perfectly hand in hand, but we tend to see those issues happen together. But I've seen some overstriders that have a really fast cadence. So, we can nerd out on reasons why that might be. But yeah, I think with like the biggest issue we see, I feel like it's overstriding. I feel like, not to demonize that, because, I classically am an overstrider. Like, I think a lot of people that have more of a sprinting background and stuff, there is this reaching and pulling type gait. But yeah, for just talking about like those braking forces and just thinking about that foot hitting the ground, and not having this fluidly pulling back and underneath your body, it holds true, right? Like anything in front of, underneath your hip and forward is like, how's that contributing for the most part to moving you through space, And I think a weird way to think about running and walking is like it's controlled falling. Like if you're standing upright, like gravity is just keeping you in place. But if you just get that forward lean, all of a sudden you're moving forward. And I think that's, related to same thing, force hitting the ground and like, it's not moving the direction you want it to. Like you should get a little forward lean, have that foot hit somewhere close to under you, and it's going to propel you forward and hopefully be more efficient and put less load through those tissues. Right.
Yeah. How do you cue that? I'm sorry, but now I want to.
You're good.
I'm asking this for partly for
Nerd out on running.
we were running the other week, and Kaylee and I were like going back and forth because I was trying to help her kind of understand exactly what you just said, the falling with running.
Yeah.
How do you cue that for people so they understand what they should be doing when they're actually running?
I probably don't talk about falling during running with people as much, because it's probably conceptually it's like weird for people, I think more like a lot of people get it right away when you talk about overstriding and you talk about braking forces, and they're just kind of like, shoot, that makes sense type of thing.
Yeah.
I think like how we go about it is we get them on the treadmill here. I'd set up my video and let it run. I'm like, go ahead and run normal. And then I bring them through some cues. And I think you see this with like strength training too. If you tell somebody to squeeze a muscle or something like that, or to move a body part in a certain way, there's like this little bit of disconnect. And for a lot of people, if you tell them to, imagine you're doing this, or, give them more of like an analogy to follow, their body just kind of naturally finds a way to do it. So we go through a lot of cues that are like, imagine your foot's a stamp and you're stomping the ground directly underneath you, rather than just saying, land with your foot under you. And probably some of the better ones are giving people more imaginative things, like imagine you're running on an exercise ball, like a yoga ball, and all of a sudden they get this high knee pickup, they shorten the stride. Imagine you're running on ice or running super quietly, or, we just try and find like one cue that simplifies it so that they can go out on their run and they can start just doing intervals of that. So we don't try and change their running schedule. It's like, you got 5 miles planned on Wednesday. Cool. You're going to go out and I'm going to tell you to do whatever we start you at, a minute or 2 minutes of, you're going to picture you're running on an exercise ball, and then go ahead and take whatever the off interval is we give of 5 minutes, where you're just going to go back to whatever feels natural. Yeah, those cues I think are huge, but some people are more literal. You're just like, hey, your foot needs to land under your body. And they're like, cool, boom, But I know personally, there's times where like I've had to work on my own gait and you think you're doing it. And then, somebody else watching you or the video tells you different. So yeah, I think that stuff helps a lot, just to just to change how the whole body's moving and not just trying to stomp your foot down somewhere.
Yeah. I use Run Easy. Do you know what that is?
Mhm.
I love it. I recommend getting it.
Yeah.
I think it's very cost effective for practitioners.
So I've looked at that. There's another practitioner I knew that was using it, and I was
Yeah,
like, the
changes
metrics
the
on that
game.
look really cool.
Changes the game.
Yeah.
And because it gives you live feedback. So like there's a number, right?
Yeah.
That's showing you, does this get better? And it even goes from like red to green. So it's like, does it get better? Or does it not? And you have an iPad in front of them.
Yeah.
The only thing with that I have found is that if you give a cue that you are like, this is for sure going to help. And even if it visually looks better and then it goes not the right direction, explaining that to the runner is so difficult. I have not figured out how to do it yet.
Oh, you
I've
just
had
gotta
that happen a couple times. And I'm like, I basically am like, I'm gonna take this away for a second because I don't want you to see that. And I'm gonna take a couple days and think about this.
Yeah, I've had those moments. I think I always tell people ahead of time, I'm like, look, we're going to go through a series of cues. We're going to try some. I'll try a couple maybe that, aren't as common that work for some people, but there's probably 2 or 3 main ones we've honed in on that seem to work really well for most people. And I'm like, look, we might try a cue. It's like all of them are going to feel awkward. You're running in a way that doesn't feel natural to you. So like it should feel awkward. That's okay. But I think knowing that we're going to try one and I might look at it and be like, yeah, no, it's not the best for you. And so I've had those moments where I'm just like, yeah, okay. So, pretending you're running on ice, that did not look good. You're just gliding your feet across the ground and telling them a little more of like what we want it to look like. But yeah, sometimes too, I'm like, I'll take an analogy and get weird and tweak it and be like, all right, I told you to pretend you're running over cracks on a sidewalk that are close together. And then they're still like not picking their feet up enough and getting knee drive. And I'm like, all right, imagine they're really tall cracks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how could a crack be tall? Like, but all of a sudden they do it. And I'm like, all right, cool. You're imagining tall cracks on a sidewalk moving forward. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. But I love that stuff. Like trying to find those problems. Like that's what keeps me engaged clinically, or I guess just with all the stuff we do is like, I like putting the puzzle together. I see a lot of people get, we'll say misdiagnosed or just not a full picture of a diagnosis at a lot of different practitioners that they go to. And I think trying to figure out like what's going on here and what's driving this. Cause, over a decade of doing this and there's still head scratching moments, obviously, but it's like, it's kind of fun to figure out like, yeah, why does your right knee hurt when you're running? And, you look at all these things and you're like, all right, we got a lot of things here going into this recipe. Like what's the biggest driver here? What do we need to address and what things can we leave alone? And yeah, especially too, I don't know, like there's definitely better ways to move your body, but to say everybody should have this perfect running form, I think is also harmful in some ways because yeah, everybody's body's different. Like why would,
Right.
like not everybody should squat the same.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we don't want everybody to have a nice hip hinge though. So like cueing that as a coach is great, but being like, your feet have to be in this exact position and you have to, have them turn this way. And it's like, you go assess somebody's hip internal versus external range of motion or their ankle mobility. And you're like, yeah, of course you're happier squatting that way. Like that's probably much, better off for your body and what it wants or has to work with. And yeah, that's like the movement optimist in me is like variable movement. It's okay, within training, but like for how you squat versus you versus me, it's like they probably all should look a little different. But yeah, same thing with running form. So I try not to get like too rigid on like, oh, we have to fix this. This looks like a problem. I think like critically thinking and piecing the puzzle together. And I'm like, okay, but is that a problem? Yeah.
Right.
That's where the individualized care comes in.
Yeah.
Like what makes you a good practitioner and like makes you stand out from just the traditional model, whatever that is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about your guys' experiences with other places, but it's like that's the stuff that would bother me when I would go into like orthopedic clinics or, different places and get assessed and like, yeah, it just feels like just a cattle in line here, I'm like, I don't know, I don't feel like you're really looking at my issue, my problem. And then even, when I go to rehab for something like that, you're like, the last 10 people that had pain in that same spot in their foot or their knee are getting the exact same exercises,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think the big thing that I've like looked at more and more over the years and tried to become an expert is like the movement side of things. Is like, understanding, like what somebody's body does well and what it doesn't do well, and trying to get them better at those areas that they're missing some capability, and I try and frame it positively, like, look, these are areas for opportunity. Like I tell people at their initial assessment, especially like the runner assessments, I'm like, look, I've never had somebody score 100% in our gait analysis system. And I've seen some pretty good runners, and like, we're going to find things here, it doesn't mean that they're all problems. And same thing, like I've never seen anybody score a perfect score on a functional movement assessment. So, it's obviously more to me to go like, well, these things scored not well, but they're not relevant to what you have going on or your goals. And yeah, I think that's like the type of care that it's like, yeah, it's just harder to find, um, to like actually look at you individually, like what you have going on. Yeah.
Well, with room for improvement, it's like thinking about sustainability and like longevity purposes by potentially changing a few of these body mechanics. We're going to keep you running into your 40s, 50s, 60s, if that's what you want,
Yeah.
and not have these problems come up tenfold down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like the hardest thing I think with like the preventative stuff and even like more performance based care is, most people tend to be really reactive to just something hurts and now I'm going to do something about it. And they kind of ignore those warning signs, the dash light coming on with the check engine light and saying like, hey, there's some things here. And people can look back at that and be like, well, I felt my hip was really tight before I threw my back out, and you're like, yeah, but, um, like there's a quote I like, and I use it probably a lot with patients, but like, pain is the last thing to arrive and the first thing to go. And, there's probably a lot of precipitating factors that you could look at and be like, hey, there's a lot of things that could have been done here before that pain ever showed up. And then same thing, like we can get pain to go away pretty quickly. It's not like directly related to injury. I mean, obviously if you injure something, it tends to hurt, but you can have pain with no tissue injury. And I think for a lot of people, that's like, we struggle with a lot of people like rehab feels incomplete. Like the clinical care feels incomplete because it's like you get them out of pain and then they're like, well, I'm cured. And you're like, yeah, but we still have a strength deficit here and you're still not able to do this the way that we want to see it with good stability and control. And like your ankle's still locked up. And like functionally, I'm thinking like you're going to go back into that same mileage and we still have some things that are not helping that knee pain out that you had going on. And I've tried over the years to get better and better at like helping people understand that, especially too, like in a cash-based model where we don't take insurance. I'm like, I never want people to think I'm trying to sell them on care, If anything, I'd probably undersell people on how many visits they need and whatnot. And
Same.
yeah, so it's like, hey, I really think you could still, like, I know that knee's not hurting. I'm super pumped, but I find just setting expectations, like telling them, yeah, I think we're going to need about this many visits. And in the first, 3 to 4 visits of this 8-visit plan, we should get you out of pain, and then, well, why do we need, X amount more visits, and trying to like set the stage for that. I think a lot of people get that or gravitate toward that. And it also opens up for then somebody to be like, I'm just looking for you to get my pain to go away. I'm like, okay, we can do that. But yeah, so we'll shoot on the short end here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not everybody's focus. And I would love to say that, personally, I'm always focused on that. But it's like the mechanic with the car and they never service sometimes where you're like, oh, there's only so much time in the day.
Right.
I feel like we could talk for like 2 more hours.
I know. Thanks for
We need to come
nerding out
back. We're
on.
inviting ourselves back right
Yeah.
now so we can
You guys got to go into like
do more.
like those long form, like what Huberman and Joe Rogan and
Yeah,
some of
I'll
those
start
that do like
3 hours.
Yeah. Then you lose listeners.
Yeah, no one wants
You
to
can
listen.
break, you can splice it, but
I was gonna say, what
Hard
Huberman
one.
started doing was he'd do these short versions. So he's got the full 3 hour and then he'd do a 30-minute. It was like just the highlights.
yeah.
Then like nobody listens to the
No one
3 hour
listens to
one.
the 3 hour one.
It's just a fun conversation for those guys.
Right.
Yeah.
No, this was great. Thank you for nerding out with us.
We do have one more important question.
Oh,
Do you think Anthony Edwards can run a sub 5-minute mile?
Oh, I don't know. Probably not.
Wow.
No.
I don't know. I don't know anything about his training, but I highly doubt that he trains for anything.
Okay. Let me finish this differently. If you take out, does he have the physiology to run a sub 5 mile?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay, I think that's why I asked that question.
I was like, right now,
not like
no,
right now.
he's trying to be a basketball player. Like he probably doesn't have that.
If you took away like the mindset portion of running and pacing and everything like that, do you think his strength, power, athleticism is there where you could run a sub 5 mile? I think that's the
I think my mind is still hung up on the right now because I'm like, I just don't think he trains for that. Like, so I don't know if his physiology right now. I bet he'd be close.
I want this to happen. We need to get big enough so he can run this mile.
Yeah, you got to put a challenge out there. Here's my guess. I bet he could run like a mid 5, low 5, like a 5:20 would be my guess.
Yeah,
That's it. I don't know. We can go over under on that once you get him to do it.
Yeah.
How about you have to run against him?
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. That's so if you say he can run a mid 5, that like theoretically is saying I can beat him, and I don't see a world in which Anthony Edwards and I, one of the most athletic human beings in the world, line up on the same start line and he doesn't beat me in that mile.
Yeah,
that's where my mind goes with that.
Yeah, but if you don't train for something, you're not adapted for it. And I'm like, I think if you said a 400, I'm like, he'd smoke you in a 400. He'd smoke me in a 400. That's what I did in college. Like, I don't train for that anymore. Therefore, I just probably don't have, I don't know.
What about 800? What do you think the line is? So 4, 8, 1200? Where do you think he drops off? Where do you think I drop him?
Where do you think I drop? I bet probably 800. I think that's where that sustained endurance and stuff.
Landon and David are listening to this, so you're pretty happy. It's just happened here.
Yeah. You just got verification that you could beat Anthony Edwards in a 400, in a mile.
No, it's not. We'll table this. I disagree. I think he can run sub 5. But we'll table that so we can make sure that you get back to work.
And you and I can continue.
I could go on. This could be an hour-long podcast.
It has been.
I've already got a list of
presentations of this. So
I have done a presentation on this, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways,
that was super important, but I have an even more important on top of that. What is your we get to do this moment of your entire life of today? Something personally, professionally, a moment when you're like, wow, I get to do this.
I would say normally I would struggle with this answer, but recently I felt that way a lot with running. I think when you see a lot of injured people that can't do it, and when like most of our ethos is centered around, that is keeping active people active. I've had a lot of moments running lately, and especially I just had like, you're throwing out your back. I had the other week where it was like, oh man, this is irony. A chiropractor who's, a week I can't run without back pain. And then the second I got back out there, it was like, man, this feels so good to be able to do this, and treating people every day. I feel that way all the time. So yeah, there's just constant reminders of like, I'm very appreciative of having the physical capability to do, a lot of the things that I can do or enjoy doing. And secondarily, I think like owning a business and shaping it the way that I want, or that I think values, care for people in the way that I think it should. That's my other kind of big one, where as much as running a business can be stressful and there's a lot to do and you wear a lot of hats, like it's super rewarding because it's yours. Yeah.
I do feel like as practitioners and people who do see those moments all the time, like every day, it gives you the reminders of like how grateful you are to be where you are.
Yeah. And I'm like, you go in the gym, you're like, all right, I got to quit complaining about how I'm tired today, whatever. And, you're like, oh, yeah, hey, my body feels good.
I get to go to the gym today.
Yeah, exactly.
I have access to a gym because I own a gym. I mean, just keeps going.
I think it's such a healthy mindset, but, it's easy to get out of that mindset. So I don't know. I find that that's always cyclical. It's like, you never appreciate just feeling good until you get a cold or the flu or something. You're like, all I want is to feel good again.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, every now and then, maybe not a big injury, but a little injury is just helpful for perspective on that type of stuff. So yeah, that's knock on wood. Yeah. Hopefully it stays that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Speaking of your business, how do people come see you? How do people find you, follow you?
Yeah, we try to do a pretty good job on Instagram, although everything on there posts on Facebook. So you can find us on Instagram, Great North Athletics. Same thing, website, greatnorthathletics.com. We have online scheduling. We do discovery calls with anybody. So we do like complimentary 15-minute calls. we find those really valuable for people to be able to ask questions and see if it's a good fit. And we always try and give them the rundown too of like, hey, this is how we operate, and just make sure that it's something that, it's what they're looking for. And otherwise, the website has everything they need. So we're here in Eden Prairie, and I think you got a good idea of kind of what we do. So happy to chat with anybody if it's something they want to explore.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes too for anyone listening for quick, easy access. So
Cool.
thanks for being here,
Yeah, this was
Spencer.
Thanks for having me.
awesome.
Good chat, guys.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
Wow, Kaylee, we made it through another episode. What do you think?
We would love if you would go give us a follow, a 5-star review, and comment on the episode and what you liked and what you'd like to see more of.
See you next time.
We get to do this.